Welcome everybody to today's Pick a Card reading. Today's Pick a Card reading is all about your love language, the way that you express your love for, and this is particularly around romantic love, for your partner, how you would indicate your interest to a crush, how you would hope to interact with a new partner if you're single. So we're looking at all of those potential options, whether you're in a relationship at the moment, whether you're circling around one where you're interested in someone, you've got a bit of a crush, or whether you're single at the moment. And in that case, we're going to be picking up the energies of the most likely love language connections and potential issues with your next potential partner to be. So the reason for doing this is that I have observed many times in doing readings over the years, and also just in terms of supporting friends and so forth in when they're going through their romantic tribulations and confusions, as we all do, that quite often people can have a great deal of love for each other, but the way that they tend to express love and therefore what they expect to get in return if they are loved, because we all judge people by ourselves, can be a mismatch. And so it can cause a confusion where there is actually a great deal of love between the two people. And if there is a clearing of the air and an understanding of what is different, and each side starts to try to communicate some of the other's love language and love style, it can usually bridge the gap. And if it can't for some reason, then it brings to the surface something that's maybe more fundamental, and therefore the relationship needs to move on. So the purpose of this is to give you an idea about your love language compared to your partner, as I say, or potential partner, so that, and also look at the connection at the moment on that level, so that we can get advice from Spirit about either maximising what is really connected and what it really is working well, or we can deal with any issues that maybe need a different approach. So what I mean also by love language is things like some people are very romantic. They like the romantic gestures, they make the romantic gestures, they expect delight in that from the other person and that to be reciprocated. Others, it's about the wit and the banter and the meeting of the minds. Others may be about doing exciting things together of all sorts, and the passion and the drive around that, and just really being focused on the other person. And others are more about, this is how I help you, this is how I make for stability, this is how I make for material commitment, I help out, and so forth. And depending upon which they are, that can sometimes give you a bit of an indication about where the relationship maybe started, whether it was in a sudden passion or whether it came out of a friendship. So it's those sorts of differences that we'll be looking for, or similarities. You may be with someone who's absolutely aligned to your love language, which probably makes certain areas of your love life a lot simpler than it would be for some other people. So, as always, the important thing is to connect into the right pile to get the right reading for you. You may very well want to look at more than one pile. There might be a couple of people around you that you're interested in. You're trying to sort out where the best match would be. This is obviously not the only factor in a good match. In fact, I think it's the factor that you look at once you think on other levels there's a good match, but you want to make sure that you smooth over any misunderstandings that could come from differences in love language and love approach. But it certainly is one that can give you a sense about how much in sync you may be about that. So you may be looking at more than one person, in which case, as I say, you may be drawn to more than one pile. Otherwise, you might be with someone, or you might be single and you're just wanting to know the next person who's likely to come in, and that's more likely to be one pile. So you work out what works for you. When you know which one, you can find the timestamps for the reading in the description box below. To help with that, I have a red carnelian heart on the first pile, I have an amethyst heart on the second pile, and I have a rose quartz heart on the third pile. So if you don't know yet, pause the video and commune in till you feel the connection. And then when you're ready, I'll see you in the reading. Welcome, pile one. So these are some of the cards that were under the crystal that you chose to give me a bit of a sense about the differences or similarities between you and your significant other or potential significant other. We'll use some tarot to get more information on this, and we'll get to the other cards that were under the crystal when we're looking at the combined energies. This side is your significant other, this side is you for this reading, and that's the sort of structure that we'll use going forward. So I wanted to start with some astrological energy and just some general sort of almost elemental energy to get a sense about what I think the love languages and love approach of each are. And there are certainly some clear synergies here. I can see why you would have been attracted to the person and they to you. I can see how this could have a lot of potential, whether you're with the person or you're going to meet them. But there are also some differences, and it's worth looking at those and seeing then what tarot tells us. So what I'm seeing over here for your significant other, this person is about empowering others, empowering themselves and empowering others, and they're not afraid of change. They really want to evolve and grow, and there is an intensity about them. They would be probably one of those sort of people who, when you connect with them, there's really, really deep eye contact. There's a sense of really being seen by them. The way they express what they want to do is very earthy. So in this connection, this is sort of like pentacles in tarot, they would want to do things. This person, interestingly enough, may have started with you as a friend, because when I see earth energy strong, and we'll see what else happens with tarot, but when I see that, it's often the sort of person who comes into your life and helps you with something. It could be a house move. It could be setting up some business activities. It's something that's very practical, and they like the practical. And I think one of the reasons they like the practical is that they understand the power of change and manifestation in the world, and they have a very clear idea about what their path is. And what they're looking for in a partner is someone who similarly wants to manifest change in the world and to also do it in a practical way, a way that is lasting. They're likely to be very business oriented or career oriented, but it is also just the small things that are practical that you will get in terms of assistance from them or their focus from them. So that's part of how they express it. It's showing you what you and they together can evolve into in a practical way and what the path is to do that. So they're very, very directed. And that's going to have appealed to you because part of your energy is the divine masculine. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be male. You could be either gender, anywhere on the gender continuum. This is just about the concept of action, doing, achieving, very focused on manifesting something in the world in that way. And there's certainly a sense that there could be a power couple type of energy operating between the two of you. This person sees that in you, sees that drive and that energy. You see in them the capacity to make the changes and to do that. So I think on a friendship through to relationship level, there is a synergy, there is an alignment. The only thing, however, that the two of you need to probably balance is that you then sit in sort of the emotional and mental area more. So the language of this person is in the material, in getting things done and in following a path and a structure. The language for you is about discussing the issues, about a little bit of banter, a little bit of fun sometimes, and also really looking at any emotional issues that are going on and bringing them to the surface. Now, Pole 1, that's probably very positive because you come to this reading. So if there are any sort of lack of synergy for whatever reason or misunderstandings going on, you really do have the capacity to have that conversation, and it's part of your love language. But do know for this person that might be a little bit unusual. They might not really know. They might have to be coaxed into something that is more philosophical and more about emotion as opposed to about action and material things. So it may be also that you're someone who likes to have lots of communication, particularly about emotional issues, even though you're very action oriented and you want to deal with things quickly. You don't want to let things fester, whereas they're likely to almost not see it unless it is something that is part of the evolution. They may not see it and they may find that a bit strange. So you may feel sometimes that they don't communicate with you as often as you would like. You may feel that they aren't prepared to talk about their feelings in a way that takes the relationship forward. You may feel it's all practical and that maybe in the most difficult case scenario, you may think, well, do they really love me if they won't talk about the emotion? But there's a very intense connection, so I don't think that that's the issue. It's just that they're very focused on their mission in the world, on what they're trying to do materially, and they see you as a partner. For them, they may feel like, why are you worried about that? Clearly I'm intensely connected to you. Clearly you're the person I want to build this with. What's the problem? And they may potentially sometimes think, is there a problem? Is there a problem I'm not seeing? So This is why I'm saying that this kind of understanding of each other is so important, because there's a lot of similarity here, but there's also some key differences. So let's have a look at what tarot has to say. So I'm going to pull out some cards for each of you again, just to see whether there's any other nuances on this sense of this person being very much the practical doer, material type of love language, and you being more the discussion, emotional sort of openness type of love language. So for your partner, and then I'll shuffle for you. So your partner is action-oriented and conflict-oriented to some degree, not with you necessarily, but part of this being on the path and that intensity, a lot of it is about the actions that they take. And it may be that the passion that they feel for you, they feel should be obvious, whereas they then direct a lot of that passion outside. They're a bit cynical, I have to say. Maybe that comes from having that understanding of change and the things that have to move on. And they're also not someone who would be particularly taken in by romantic gestures. They would think, well, what is that really? Is that's sort of like the finery around something, whereas they much more want to know, is there a commitment here? Is this something, are we on a pathway together? And they are, as I say, a little bit cynical in terms of all those sorts of things. They're likely to go into conflict if they feel like that's happening. So part of the discussion from you in relation, as I say, to Chiron and Mercury is not to make it about being more romantic. And I don't think you're overly romantic yourself, in actual fact. You're very much in your mind, in your head. It's more about making sure they understand that raising these things is not about conflict, that it's going to sort of get in the way of the relationship. I think they've probably found with other people before that they haven't jumped through all the hoops that somebody might have wanted romantically, and they're a bit cynical about that. They want someone who's a life partner. So that makes them start to question whether the relationship is the right connection for them and whether they can build and invest in the future. So your partner is very much looking for a longer term future with somebody. They want to find that energy. They get cynical if they come off the path. So the point about this is you're very clever, Pile 1, you are able to communicate, you're very dexterous with that, you are able to use that to understand that, and understanding that side of things to make it not about a battle, not about we need to talk more, why don't you answer my texts or whatever, but moderating that and making the choices around that can deal with this energy, because they're probably more insecure about the relationship than you are at the moment by the looks of things. I think you just feel like we could talk more, you're so focused on career or whatever it is, let's communicate more, let's have a bit of fun. So that may be part of the side of this, I think. Pile 1 is to use that air energy in a sort of banter and wit. So it's not about a declaration of we need to do something differently, but it is about banter and wit, and maybe within the context of how that transformation occurs, because you are very committed to the relationship and you do meet them level for level on wanting to see something that is material, a material outcome together, as I say, potentially a power couple, certainly people who could be working together or create something together, at the very least a family if that's what you want. So there's definitely that sense of commitment, and if you keep communicating that commitment, but possibly also saying with the wheel here that not everything is always going to work out. If you go back to the fact that Chiron is under this card, so Chiron is an asteroid that is the wounded healer. So it is looking at where things don't work out or where there are disappointments. You seem to have a better grip on the fact that sometimes on the pathway together, things won't necessarily always work out. Sometimes the ambition that is so strong in your partner will not always work out. Your partner gets their way more often than not, and I don't think that that's necessarily with you, like trying to make you do something, but just in life, they are very successful, or they definitely have the capacity to be very successful. So they get a little bit dismayed when things don't work out. So that's the sort of issue. If you can use your banter and your wit and your connection to them to show you're committed to a cause regardless of whatever happens, then they're more likely to start to want to communicate with you in that way. So it's almost like not a full on assault on the issue and sitting down and saying, why don't we talk more, and I don't feel the emotional connection and we need to talk about our feelings. They probably don't want to do that, pile one, but that doesn't mean they don't have feelings. But if you talk to them about how better communication can connect you more strongly to this, then they're not likely to see a pattern they've seen before. I definitely think that a lot of my pile one, your significant other, or the next relationship for you is someone who has been a bit dismayed by all the emotional stuff around love. They think that wanting to be in a partnership and going forward should speak for itself. But of course things don't speak for themselves and you need that communication. So it's about you being clever. But I do think with that Chiron, as I say, and with Mercury, you have the ability to do that. So let's have a look at the cards that were also under the deck, which are from another tarot deck, and it was looking at the combined energies between you at the moment and where there are strengths to bridge this gap and where there might be other issues that you need to think about. So it looks to me like many of these relationships are quite new. With the Ace of Pentacles reversed, it's sort of like you haven't fully flowered this relationship. If your relationship has been there for longer, then possibly whatever you're trying to do together is in its early stages. And one of the things around it is sorting out the love energy between you will actually help with whatever you're trying to create or bring into being together. So regardless of the fact that I think your partner thinks it should be self-evident and just get on with it, you're more in tune with the fact that getting those energies right, getting that love language right between you, getting that harmony around that is something that will only help whatever is trying to be done materially. So again, I'm getting that sense of you using that clever mind of yours to have that discussion in a way that they can understand and in a language and a sense of outcomes that they can understand. They're quite conservative in a way. I mean, I don't mean necessarily politically, but they really like to know that there is a plan and a path. I get a sense of this person sitting down and doing project plans and 5-year goals and watching their budget very carefully and all those sort of things. Whereas you're more like the magician over here. You're more bringing together different elements. You are more relaxed with moving between love languages and in general energetic levels. And so that's why it's saying you will actually be the leader in this. And that might dismay you a bit because with that Pluto over there, they're probably, as I say, very intense. They probably seem very powerful. It may be for some of you, they have a higher status than you when you meet them, something like that. But in actual fact, it is more like a meeting of equals on that level. And to some degree, you are more developed and more ready to use your power. They are more careful. They are very much a planner. And it's going to show up in their love stuff as well. It is going to show up and it's about here's the plan, here's how we'll be together, here's what our future is going to be, all of that kind of thing. They're very much, this is the plan and I'm sticking to the plan. So that's why the sort of more romantic or the sort of like more sort of fun, lighthearted stuff is a little bit discombobulating to them. But you have the ability to do that. This is definitely saying there's a real love connection between you. There's no doubt about this. This difference is not about a lack of love. It is precisely the sort of thing that I thought this reading might uncover, which is where there is a true love connection. It's just that those differences need to be sort of brought to awareness in some way. The issue with this person and for you, pile one, is that you have to be clever how you do it, because I think other people have tried to get them to think in this way before and it hasn't really worked for them, and they get quite gun shy at that point about whether is this really my life partner. I think there's every possibility that you are, and the two of you together will be very powerful, as I say, but it's going to be kind of down to you to navigate the differences and bring all of this out in a way that both of you are comfortable with. So I think it's very promising. I think that it's not a huge gap, I have to say. It's just more that you're more aware of the variety of love languages than your partner is. you're a little bit more, not necessarily more emotionally mature, but more emotionally experienced in some ways. You have a better instinct for that. But there is definitely a very strong connection between you, and you very, very much, once you sorted that out, you can really move forward. So I'm going to now put down 3 cards from an oracle. There's a couple of oracles I'm going to use. They're both based on love. So I'm just looking to close out the energy of this reading with some more information from Spirit about either what's existing at the moment in terms of both each of you and then the combined energy, to see if there's any more guidance or whether there's an indication of how the harmony can be reached. Okay, so I think Spirit's been pretty clear about this. I think for a start, it's interesting that gifts have turned up here, because that is part of a love language that people talk about. And when someone is very material, there's 2 ways where gifts will come out really as part of the love language. One will be when someone is very romantic. The other is where they're very material. So gifts that fit what the person's preferences are, or what their vision is for the 2 of you together, is something that they would respond to. It's material. It's real. So that is potentially a way of opening a discussion. So if it was a gift that somehow also opened a discussion about how to communicate more. So it could be some sort of communication device, for instance, a new iPhone or something. So something like that is a potential way to get their attention, because it's material and they care about material things. And that doesn't mean they're materialistic. It's just part of how they understand that somebody cares. You over here do look like you're a bit confused. You don't need to be confused. Hopefully this will help in understanding it. But there is that sort of sense where you're not necessarily getting the communication that you want. And they do need to find a way to do it. Spirit is saying passion. What is passionate between you? Because remember, there was Pluto there. There's a real intensity there, and the divine masculine. It feels to me as though the way to navigate this is to ignite the passion, possibly use a very strategically chosen gift, and then bring the energy up and clear the air at that point. Because I think, number one, it's going to clear the air for both of you. It's going to very much make the other party know that you care. But for you, I think it's going to give an opportunity to have more communication and to talk about how that kind of discussion helps with whatever you're trying to create. So let's finish off with the other love oracle, just to get any last information from Spirit about how to do this. I mean, I think Spirit's been pretty clear about how to do it, but let's see if there's any last information and maybe an overview from Spirit about where the relationship can be if these differences are sort of brought gently and cleverly to the surface. Okay, so I think this is suggesting that whether or not your significant other is talking to you about this, or if you first meet or you're around a crush, the person has been hurt before. They are careful about this sort of thing. They feel a really intense connection. But I think if the passion and the gifts and the understanding, the material pathway together and the commitment to that pathway, so your commitment there to the pathway is shown and is brought more to the surface, then there's this sense here with the Rainbow Reviver of all the dreams and the positivity come. It effectively, I think, turns the star around back to hope. So there is definitely a sense that you need to understand with this person that they have been disappointed before about this and they don't really fully understand why it happened. So again, you're the person who needs to bring to the surface that there is a soulmate thing here, and there is. The energy, as I said right at the beginning, is very similar. I do have a sense of a couple that more than just being together, they are doing something in the world. This is interesting for Spirit to bring up in the centre, in the connection between it. It looks to me like both of you may have had issues around being different in terms of your love language or love nature within your family. So that obviously isn't in a romantic way, but I feel like maybe your significant other was not fully understood, maybe wasn't fully supported by their parents, maybe didn't sort of get given the sort of gifts that made them feel cared for. There's a real guardedness around them, and they're intense about finding the right person and being on a pathway almost to prove something. And for you, I think that it's possible that your very clever mind made you a little bit too prescient about your family on occasion, and you may have found that there was a pushback around your observations within the family. You're very much the magician. You very much understand emotional dynamics. So together the two of you can sort of heal that, because your capacity to be heard and to help and to heal, and their need in a sense to be heard and healed, can reparent both of you. So it brings it back to that sort of energy. The other thing I would say I'm getting is that for some of you who've been in an established relationship, or even somebody who the next time that you have one, there is also a possibility about family around this if you want it, but you need to have got that energy right to be able to bring that into being. And it's not about the light side of romance, it's about the really material, committed side of romance. But overall, pile one, I think there are differences between your love language. It may well be that part of that has more to do with what's happened in the past to your other half. It may well be that you can actually bring them closer to your side of the fence. But I think either way, you are going to learn and clarify how to be with each other and be committed to each other, because I think there is a real purpose to you being together. So I think it's very optimistic. But I do hope that this helped in understanding some of those more unconscious dynamics that are going on, so that you can, because I do think it's going to be up to you, take this forward and connect it in a way that works for both of you. So I hope you enjoyed the reading, pile one, and if so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you have any comments on this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile two. These are some of the cards that were under the crystal that you chose. There are also some tarot cards that we will look at a little bit further in the reading to look at the combined energies between the two of you. But I wanted to look at the astrological and the kind of energetic level of information to give me a first sense about the connection between the two of you, or the connection to be if you've yet to meet the person or get into a relationship with them. And what that might tell me about what their love language and your love language are likely to be, and then we will get more information on that from the tarot. So the interesting thing about this is that in some ways it's not telling me a great deal yet about the love language, so I think the tarot will show us more how that shows up in actuality. But what it is saying to me is I think that your partner, which is the person over here, and this is you, is very confident and very clear about the fact that they want this relationship. The fourth house has come up, so that's hearth and home. So there's a very strong sense for them that they see this as a relationship for the long term, one that they could potentially build a family in if that's what you both want to do. There's definitely that sense of commitment. So the other thing that's also really interesting, pile two, is that every single one of these cards has a moon element to it. So this oracle is about moon connections and moon energies in any case, but both of these cards pick that up as well too, because the fourth house here, which as I say is my sense of real commitment, longer term connection and so forth, is ruled by the moon. The planet that rules this particular house is the moon. And then we have the waxing crescent moon, which is about setting intentions and a confidence and a planning and a real sense that this is the one and this is what the future is going to be. And I do feel that your significant other or your crush or the next person you meet is coming out of a period where they haven't had good relationships. They're coming out of darkness. It's sort of like coming out of a long, dark night of the soul. They really feel in this connection there's something much more positive. So regardless of whatever we see, I think, around the love connection and love nature, I think that there is a really strong connection here. And with all that moon energy, it's a very psychic, spiritual connection as well too. They sort of know, they have an inner knowing that this is right. And what that will mean, pile two, is even if there are differences in your love languages and love approach, there is a deep knowing and a setting of intentions here where the person, I think, will be open to anything from you that you need around that. and you will be open to it with them too. And there is something very deep between the two of you, because we've got the conjunction over here. A conjunction is an aspect in astrology that is about bringing two separate energies together, and it's a very positive connection for the most part. It's about unity, it's about blending, it's about intention, it's about action. So I don't think this will have been a hard relationship to have got into, and I don't think it's a hard relationship to make very long term if you both want it. But I feel that you at this point feel it's a little bit newer. Like, to you, this whole thing is newer than it is in a way to them. This feels like someone who's gone, aha, I've been in the desert for so long and I've finally found my oasis. I've finally found the one. For you, I feel it's like, yes, I do think it is that way, but I don't want to rush. I want to make sure that things are balanced. So that suggests to me that in a way it's a similar thing. I don't think you've necessarily had as much difficulty as your significant other in relationships, but you will have dealt with things where they were imbalanced before, because you really want to make sure the balance is there. It is possible with this, and we'll see with what the tarot is telling us, but it is possible that your partner may be a bit overwhelming at times. They may want to really move to things very quickly, and you may need to say, put on the brakes, I want a little bit more time and so forth. So being aware that that's just because they're really feeling sure about it, not coming really from insecurity. I don't think they're insecure, but I think that they just know, they just really feel the connection. So let's have a look at some tarot between the two of you. So I want to look at tarot energies around your significant other, and then also around you, to get a little bit more of an idea about how the love language and the love nature is expressed, because this is much more around degrees of certainty and senses of how far the relationship has already developed. So for your significant other, and then I'll shuffle again for you. All right, so I think that this side again is picking up maybe what your significant other is coming out of, and what that means in the way that they communicate and how they express their love. And for them, I think for some of them, they may well have been divorced. They may, depending upon your age, their age, and so forth. It looks like for many of my pile too, your significant other may have literally had quite a nasty or stressful divorce, or they have separated themselves from more conventional ways of doing things. They are highly psychically in tuned. They very much are looking for their spiritual partner, their soul twin, their twin flame, that kind of energy. And that's part of how they communicate it. It's they probably, in a sense, and they may not even know they're doing this, but they may turn up in your dreams. They may, synchronicities around them and around you may be a way of communicating something. There's a sort of manifestation of spiritual energy around them. And their love language around that is around what is a soul connection, what the dreams and wants are. It's not so much that they're romantic or unromantic, or they're passionate or not passionate. It's a deeper energy there where they're going straight to the soul. And then that on one level, that's good, because I think it means that they're not tied to whether it's a lot of discussion or whether it's a lot of sort of romantic gestures or whether it's material stuff, though I do think that they want something more solid than what they've had before. But on the other hand, it might be a little bit unclear to you, and that might be why you feel not as sure as they seem to be at this point in time. They're very quick to making decisions, and the one risk around them, I think, is with the Judgment card. That can sometimes mean decisions that if they're not taken relatively quickly, then the opportunity passes by. I think this person is highly sensitive. They're sensitive both emotionally and psychically, and they're really looking for that acknowledgement of the connection. I think that's all they're really looking for from you at this point in time. I think that they would be okay about things taking a bit longer, and then them trying to really empathize with you and work out how to meet your love nature and make you feel comfortable and more sure. But they just need some sort of acknowledgement, some sort of spiritual connection discussion around it. For you, you need to know on a very intellectual level, you are somebody who would be likely to banter and to flirt. You're someone who really wants to work out that there is a synergy of ideas. So the mental realms, all of that sort of thing is very important to you, a philosophical connection. They're kind of spiritual, you're kind of intellectual. There is very much a spiritual connection between you, but it's the way it's expressed. So they're likely to be very much from their heart and from their feelings and from their soul, and that's why they move so quickly, because they just sort of feel so connected. For you, it's, I really want to understand you a bit better. I really want to know more about how you think about things. It looks to me like you've maybe been in relationships before where there's been a tension. In fact, it's possible that for some of my pile too, some of your love nature is almost attracted to banter and debate. You might really enjoy that. So be aware that if you enjoy doing that, that this person is highly sensitive and they may not necessarily take it in the spirit that you mean, and you could cause anxiety in them in a way, because it's not for you. You don't live in anxiety when you're around conflict. You kind of get a bit exhilarated by it, but it's all intellectual for you, and you're a very optimistic person. Even if you've had issues in relationships before, you really think that meeting of the minds is really important, and communication. But this person wants to communicate from their soul. You want to communicate from your throat chakra, from your voice. So understanding that, sort of like maybe tempering the wit and the repartee a bit, and using the language that is around soul connection will make this person feel more comfortable and be able then to give you the space you need to work out, well, a soul connection is wonderful, but if we disagree on everything political and everything philosophical, it may not work. So you need to know a little bit more about them. Knowledge is part of your love language. They just need to feel that connection is recognised. So there's a very powerful connection between you. But as I say, you may think, well, it's obvious that it is, and I'm just trying to like find out a little bit more about them to make sure what this is like in the long term. How can they be so sure? Over there, they're probably thinking, why are you questioning it all the time? And, can't you feel it? So they're in the feeling nature and the psychic nature. You're in the thinking and the philosophical. So this is why these sort of readings are actually quite helpful, I think. So given that, the cards that were also with the original cards under your crystal were from one tarot deck and a different one to this one. And I want to use that to see what the combined energy between the two of you is at the moment, to see what else Spirit might say to help in bridging that gap. So the definite issue at the moment for your significant other is whether or not this is going to be a committed relationship. They want it, but I don't know that they feel yet that is coming from you. There is a sense around, is the feeling that they have really reciprocated on some level. And I think it's also coming again, it's confirming again that there's something that didn't work in the past for them. And it may have been something that they really believed in before, but sometimes I think what happens with soul twin relationships, and I think this could be one, is that we meet almost versions of them, like foreshadowing, before we meet the one, and it's so that we understand the lessons and so forth. So I wouldn't be surprised if this person, because they move so quickly to saying, yes, I feel that this is it, could have been in a relationship that failed to deliver, because it was meant to teach them a bit about that nature, and also to show them the sort of person with maybe just a different soul connection that would be the right one for them. So I think being aware of that will help you with this. You yourself are dealing with whatever emotional issues from the past as well. So it's not this person is not Robinson Crusoe about this. You are also dealing with some, but you are more ready to let that go, more ready to connect emotionally. But for you, it does need to come through the mind. You need to be convinced first mentally, and then you're prepared to say this isn't like other patterns and so forth. You are the one, however, that can bring the temperance and the balance to this situation, because this person is so sensitive. So you've really got to use that wit and clever mind to find that balance, because they are not that confident. they're confident of you and they're confident of the connection, but they're not confident of themselves because they have been through something pretty significant, even if they haven't told you about it, and they may not have. Because this sort of person, if they're feeling this is the one, this is my soul twin, the last thing they probably want to talk to you about is past relationships that didn't work out. They want their sense of certainty to be there on the table for you. So for some of you, you may not even know about this, but being gentle with the way that you explore the philosophical connections, understanding how much they are, highly sensitive, that's going to really help with this relationship. So what I want to do to finish off the thing is to ask from a couple of oracles that are designed completely around love. So a little bit more energy and information, either about what's going on at the moment in this relationship, or which will go on early in the relationship if it's somebody you've yet to meet or get involved with. And also potentially some advice from Spirit about bridging this gap in a way that brings your two love natures and love approaches more closely together. Okay, so this is very much picking up the same energy, I think. There is freedom here around this person. They have got free of something. They have got free of something, as I say, in past relationships. And I think to them, finding their soul twin is freedom. It's not, they're happy to commit because that's part of a partnership going forward that frees both. So, and if some of you are concerned because you do know the person went through a lot and you're wondering if it's a rebound, I don't think that's the case. The person does feel the very strong connection and they are free of that energy, but their self-esteem and self-worth is not yet quite there. And you're dealing with something in that area too, Pile 2. As I say, maybe not as heavy, but it's there for both of you. That's part of why you're careful. Maybe you have been in a relationship before where that sort of banter and repartee and debate turned into something that was so competitive that it was corrosive. So how you manage that and how you have your self-worth as well too is important. You, interestingly enough, are the one who can come out of the caution again. This person is waiting for the sign from you. So you've been cautious. That is part of your love nature. You don't rush in. And they need to understand that it's not necessarily a bad sign. But if you are less cautious and more able to connect with them and see the value in it, then I think that balances this more. So let's ask one last oracle for any final advice around bridging this, because I do think there's a lot in this relationship for you. And I think that because this person feels very flexible, once they get that sense that, yes, the hearth and home is there and the soul connection is there, I think that they will probably meet you sort of repartee for repartee, wit for wit. It's just at the moment they're a little bit too unsure of themselves, not of you. And it's a difficult emotional thing to be balancing with at the moment. So let's get the last advice from Spirit about the potential of this relationship in understanding those differences. So it's bringing the same thing. Maybe to you there is some conflict in this relationship. Maybe you do feel pressured in some way. Maybe you do feel that they're not answering the questions that you need them to answer. Understanding maybe how those questions are landing with them and why will help. And then you are the person who can bring the temperance in and resolve any of that. This is not like a past relationship, I think, that you've had where the conflict has meant something more corrosive underneath. This is just a different approach and a different speed to moving to sureness between you. That's the key thing. There's, again, this sense of the soulmate, the yin and yang. There's a very strong connection between the two of you that can be reached. And they are spiritually mature. Like, they are very connected to their spiritual sense. That's why I say I think there's quite psychic and all those sort of things. They may literally be trying to build that connection on that level, or they're very spiritually advanced and they have a particular spiritual practice. But that's what they're bringing into it. To some degree, I think it's Spirit saying here that they're not wrong about the connection. There really is that possibility. But because they've been hurt, the spiritual centre knows, but the heart is feeling very vulnerable at this point in time. And for you, because you're feeling you haven't got all the answers that you need, you're not sure, and but you can be the one who comes out of that and brings the temperance to it. So I think there's a lot of potential in this relationship, and I don't think it will be that hard once you've got through those issues of speed and communication to really make this work. But there are some differences between you, but I do think once they feel more certain that you're on the same pathway with them and you feel more certain that the timing suits you, then we get the yin and yang. So pile 2, I hope that resonates for you, and I hope that it's helpful. I hope you enjoyed the reading, and if so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you have any comments on it, love to hear about it in the comments to see how this connected with your current relationship, or maybe a crush you have, or what you're looking for in somebody, what you want to draw into your life. Love to hear about that. But beyond all of that, I'd also really love to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3. These cards were under the crystal that you chose to come to this reading, and there were some other tarot cards which I'll use a little bit later in the reading. But these are looking at astrological energies and also sort of elemental energies to give me a sense about some of the key love language and love nature aspects between your significant other, or the person that you next meet, or the person you're crushing about, and you. So it gives me the first sense about what appears to be aligned and what might need to be understood better between you. The first sense I have around your significant other is they are, firstly, the grand romantic. They love romantic gestures with the 5th house there. They're probably very creative in what they do with that. They want to give things to you, gifts. They want to make declarations of love. They are in love with love. They're very excited about anything in that sort of space, and it's not, you wouldn't be left unsure. Once they're ready to move towards a relationship, you would not be left with any lack of certainty that they are romantically interested in you. This is not really a friendship energy. It could have come from a friendship to start with, but it's very much your sort of classic romance energy. It's very emotional. It's very spiritual. They're a dreamer. This person is the classic idealist. They're looking for the ideal. Some of how they express it, beyond potentially very classic romantic gestures, like the bringing of the roses or the giving of chocolates or whatever, is in all things that are sensual and enjoyable, all things that nourish the body in one form or another. So that's not just obviously lovemaking and all of that kind of thing. It's also, they are likely to really want to go out to really wonderful restaurants. They're likely to want to enjoy great wine and music and enjoyment. It's, for them, love is the great pleasure. It is the great liberator of the heart. It is the thing that they live for, really, regardless of whatever they do in their life. They could be highly creative with this sort of energy. They could be people who sublimate some of this romantic energy into their careers or into creativity, but they are the romantic. That is their language. And one of the things that needs to be borne in mind when you're dealing with someone like that is, if you don't respond to that in the same way, if you find that all a little bit too superficial, because it's not superficial to them. This is not superficial at all. But some people find romance, that's all very nice. But what about, the hearth and home, and what about our mental connections and so forth? That can be quite dismaying to them if they don't get that back, or they don't get the appreciation. This is why it's important to be looking at these sort of things, because for you also love pleasure. So that you two meet very much on enjoying pleasure, enjoying the wonderful things of life. And you certainly, I think, would take pleasure in their romantic gestures. I don't think you're going to think, what's all this about? I think that is a real connection point, and it's a real synergy, which is great. But it looks to me like you've often been attracted to people very opposite you, because you've got the opposition here. So that is in a transit, in a chart, is between two energies, and they're in opposition to each other. They're kind of playing off each other. And so I think in a reading like this, it very much says that you have a tendency to be attracted to somebody who's opposite you, somebody who challenges you in some way. And so the romantic side may almost seem to you to be too soft. But underneath we have the Cancer energy. And so the Cancer energy is around protection of self and protection of others, emotionally very resonant. So underneath this is in fact the connection that really can go with the person who's romantic and very caring and very much coming from their heart. but it takes a bit to get to you, pile 3. It's like they have to kind of go through a ring of fire to get there. And I think sometimes you don't go towards where your heart would be most protected. There's something that dynamic for you where you enjoy the sport and the repartee of the opposites. Now, if this person is opposite to you in other ways, that's fine. That's actually a really lovely connection because it will get to your heart, particularly as both of you really enjoy the fine things of life. But if you don't feel that they're opposite, then you may find this is a bit overwhelming and that isn't giving you the pattern that you're used to. So there's nothing wrong with being attracted to opposites, but understanding whether it's going to ultimately give you what you want is an issue. It could be that for some of you in your family, you saw your parents were very much opposites and sparred off each other, or there was lots of debate within your family home. And so you kind of connect that with security, even though a lot of people, potentially the most romantic of us in particular, maybe don't see opposition and debate as being the point. But I think that's going to be one of the key issues here. So let's have a look at what the tarot can tell us. And firstly, not the tarot that was under the crystal, I'll get to that later, but I just want to look at some tarot energy to give me a little bit more idea about some of the nature of each of your love languages and love approaches, so that we can get a little bit more information about whether or not you're romantic as well, but you just like to have a bit of a debate, or whether there is a difference here that you need to be aware of. So firstly, for your significant other. And then I'm going to shuffle again for you. Spirit to give me cards for you. Okay, so firstly, the romantic sort of energy, the 10 of Cups again, the grand romantic, the real sort of like emotional joy, the heart is what matters, everything else is secondary to it, is being affirmed again. And for your significant other, it is likely to be affirmed in very structured and conservative ways. And I'm not talking politically, but I'm saying marriage or some sort of contractual or living together, something that has that sort of sense of real coming into the world and being structured. So they want that connection, and they want the longer term connection. They want a sense of mutual passion. So this picks up the kind of nourishment here as well. So it's mainly going to be exciting, interesting things that they want to do together. They want to intrigue you. They want to entrance you. They want to draw you into this sort of emotional sort of well of feeling that they have, but they want to do it in an exciting and interesting way. And I think on some levels they know that you like a little bit of push and pull, a little bit of debate, a little bit of difference and so forth, and they can balance that. So that's very positive, because although they're very much in their heart, they are also about action, and they also can bring things into alignment and understand stuff. So I think if they know a bit about your emotional history and they know that maybe they're a bit different to what you've normally been attracted to, I don't think that will disturb them particularly. They will find the way to communicate what they want, and in a way that can also connect with you. And that's good. You have some optimism around this. I think that you know that this is different to your other relationships. And you know to some degree it may be completing a cycle for you where you used to like to debate and have that sort of sense of push and pull within a relationship. Something came out in a relationship for you in the not too distant past that's made you really consider whether that was a wise choice. And certainly it made you go back into yourself with the Cancer underneath there with the moon reversed. You really do protect your heart ultimately. So I think, interestingly enough, this very different approach is one that's really going to appeal to you, and you're going to be able to accept and be optimistic about. But it is different. So you do need to understand it's not like other relationships. But I think that you're at the stage where you think that's a good thing. So I think that's very positive, pile 3. So let's have a look at the cards that were under the crystal the tarot cards from a different tarot deck to look at the combined energies between the two of you. So the first thing I would say, which is really nice about this, over on your side you've got justice and they've got justice. I think the two of you have a real capacity to move into something long term and to get your philosophical views of the world very much aligned. You have a very similar idea about what is right and good in the world, even if you express it differently. And I do think you probably express it differently, but I think you will come to understand what the other person is doing, and there's a sense of peace of mind that you have about this again. So again, I get the sense you've been hurt in the past, possibly because of the choices that you made, and you've had a realization about that. You do live quite a bit in your head. You are somebody who needs to be convinced on a mental level, and I think that's why the opposition was sort of always triggering for you, because it was that kind of sense of debate and what was different that was exciting and interesting to you, and you did take pleasure in that. But you've seen that doesn't always give you the outcome that you want, where that Cancer energy around you feels protected and loved and secure. So there's very much a sense that you're seeing this over here, even if it's very different to what you're used to. Your significant other, the romance in them is bringing them outside of themselves. They have had their heart broken before. This type always will have, to be honest, unless you're both just very young and it's the first school, high school sweetheart type romance. This type, because they wear their heart on the sleeve, will have been hurt before, but they see this as something worth coming out of any of the problems. So they're not deterred. I mean, that's the nice thing about this, I think. If you have been a little bit sort of wary of what they're doing, or you're not really, it's almost a little bit overwhelming with the romance of it, then they're not deterred by that. They kind of understand it. They've had their heart hurt too. And that's why I think you're going to connect. Interestingly enough, the connection between the two of you will be an intellectual one. Their heart is always going to be on their sleeve. That's just who they are. And respecting that and acknowledging that and enjoying that and making that something pleasurable between the two of you, and reciprocating to the degree that you feel comfortable with in that kind of way of communicating will certainly help. But there is something in the way that you think and what you believe about the world that is going to be the key to bring you together. Or if you're together, to really solidify this and make this what it could be. So I'm going to finish off with a couple of completely dedicated to love oracles, just to get any last information from Spirit that they'd like to give you, either about the current situation or how it is when you first meet, if you haven't met the person, and then potentially anything else in terms of advice about getting to that sense of a mutual way of looking at the world. Okay, so this is picking up the same sort of energy. You're coming out of a period of time where I think that your attraction to people who are very different to you or who were in competition with you in some way, you are still going through the healing process and allowing yourself to do that. I think Spirit is saying, not blocking it or not denying it, like understanding that so that you can bring that to the end will really help. And there is a real potential for this relationship to do that if you don't block your own healing and your own understanding. Their self-worth is going to very much help, because although, as I say, they've had their heart broken, nothing's going to ever sway this person's belief in love. And the passion between you, so that sense that you both really enjoy everything that is sensual and passionate, is really important to this. And the fact that they had the Two of Wands, so they understand that they're not always going to just be doing the traditional romantic stuff. They can get to the point where it's what do you enjoy together. So I think Spirit is very much saying, let that passion be a healing thing for you. And let their self-worth reflect to you, because they think the world of you, all three. They really do. And if you can look into that mirror as well too, that helps with the healing as well. So let's see the last pieces of information from Spirit from the other oracle about the sort of potential of this and any other sort of advice to bring your love languages closer together. Wow. So this energy for your significant other, they are, because of their belief in love, I think, they often help and heal others. So there may even have been that some of you have met because they have seen that you were hurt and they've been a friend and they've helped you, and then their heart is open and the romantic stuff is coming in. But there's something there, and their belief in love is a very nurturing belief. So I think, but possibly they understand also that they're reparenting themselves, they're understanding themselves better from disappointments before, so that they can keep their heart open. For you, there's a spiritual maturity. There is an understanding about the patterns that maybe you've done that haven't been working in your own best interests, and you have reached that. That's why the world is there. So everything is aligning itself well for that. And then the two of you together, there's a maturity that comes together. So this is a very promising relationship. It has a real sense that it could be go for the long term if you want it. And it is about both of you really understanding yourselves and therefore being able to understand each other. I think in the end, you'll end up having far more in common than you have different, even in your love nature. It's just that you, for some reason, thought that you almost needed to be the opposite or kind of intention. One of the things I have to say is that romantic movies do not help us in this regard. Romantic movies nearly always have the trope that the two people almost dislike each other at the beginning, and that's what's really driving it all, and eventually they end up together. Now, sometimes that happens. Sometimes if in reality there is a really strong connection and it's just misunderstanding, that is exactly right. But what it has done is it's put into us sometimes that sense, and the statement opposites attract, that's what we should be looking for. I think that you've come to the conclusion that's not what you should be looking for. You're looking for something where someone makes you feel loved, not makes you feel like you're always in a debate. And that's a real step forward for you. And the person that you are around at the moment, or the next person coming in, is someone who has also come to a conclusion about how to be open-hearted even when there's been disappointments. So that's why we get this sense of something very, very strong and very solid, and why I have a very strong sense that you can bridge the differences in your love natures, because they're not really as different as they appear. It's really just a different attitude or philosophy, and you'll bring that philosophy together with those two justice cards coming up. So I'm really happy for you, pile 3. I think this is really, looks like a really good relationship. I hope that it resonates for you. I hope that you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and please subscribe. And if you have any comments or thoughts on it, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Other than that, I'd really love to see you in future readings.